Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a paradox that, let's be honest, almost all of us experience at some point. You know that overwhelming feeling of being incredibly busy, yet somehow feeling like you're actually accomplishing nothing important? Well, we are diving into Greg McKeown's phenomenal concept from his book, Essentialism, to figure out exactly why that happens and how to fix it.
Seriously? Have you ever felt overworked but totally underutilized? If you constantly feel stretched way too thin and you find yourself, majoring in minor activities, you are definitely in the right place. Look, we live in a world where almost everything is just noise, and very few things are actually exceptionally valuable. So how do we find those valuable things?
Let's start with Section 1, the non-essentialist trap, the paradox of success.
Think of your energy as a strictly fixed resource. If you distribute it across a million trivial things, dozens of projects, endless meetings, overflowing inboxes, you're going to make just a millimeter of progress in a million different directions. But an essentialist, they take that exact same amount of energy and point it powerfully forward at one vital goal. It literally creates a laser beam of real momentum.
McKeown calls this the paradox of success, and we can trace exactly how it builds up over the years. Look at year one. You have clarity of purpose, and that leads to initial success. Awesome, right? Well, because you're successful, in year two, you earn this reputation as the go-to person. You suddenly get a ton of new options and opportunities thrown your way. But by year three, those increased demands lead to totally diffused efforts. You're spread way too thin. And finally, by year four, you suffer from utter distraction. You've actually lost the very focus that caused your success in the first place. It's crazy. But success actually becomes the catalyst for your failure, as you just accumulate too many commitments by default.
Moving right along to Section 2, the essentialist mindset, less but better. So to break out of this vicious cycle, we have to adopt an entirely new paradigm. And let's be clear up front, essentialism is not about being lazy, passive, or unproductive. Not at all. It is the deliberate, active choice of defining your absolute highest level of contribution and then relentlessly protecting it. The German phrase for this is weniger aber besser, which translates to less but better.
When a non-essentialist looks at an overflowing plate, they usually ask, okay, how can I fit it all in? They somehow think they can perfectly balance everything. But the essentialist stops and asks, what is the trade-off? We have to stop denying the reality of opportunity costs. Every single time you say yes to something, you are, by definition, saying no to something else. An essentialist just makes those trade-offs deliberately, instead of letting everyone else make them for them.
It's also super important to separate this concept from minimalism. While minimalists focus on reducing physical clutter and, clearing out their closets, essentialists are focused on clearing out their calendars and their mental bandwidth. It's really about protecting your time and energy from the trivial many so you can actually invest in the vital few.
All right, Section 3, Stage 1, Explore, Finding the Vital Few.
Essentialism operates on a continuous three-part loop: explore, eliminate, and execute. This loop is basically your engine for clarity. And it has to start with exploration, because you simply can't filter out the noise if you don't evaluate your options first. Paradoxically, essentialists actually explore way more options at first than non-essentialists do. They do this so they can ensure they're committing to the absolute right ones.
But how do you actually explore? Well, you have to create space. That means carving out distraction-free time just to think, keeping a journal, embracing play, and getting enough sleep. Remember, essentialism doesn't mean cutting out everything enjoyable or just working yourself to the bone. Activities like play, which relieves stress and sparks creativity, and getting a full 8 hours of sleep, these are absolutely vital investments. They aren't distractions at all. They are exactly what yield your highest productivity.
Which brings us to Section 4, Stage 2, Eliminate, the power of no.
To eliminate ruthlessly, you need what's called the 90% rule. It's a real game changer. When you're evaluating an option, think about the single most important criterion for that decision. Now score it from 0 to 100. If it scores anything less than a 90, it automatically becomes a 0 and gets rejected. Boom, gone. If it's not a clear yes, then it's a clear no. This completely stops you from getting stuck committing to those mediocre 60s and 70s.
Of course, eliminating things means you actually have to say no. And let's be honest, saying no gracefully is genuinely difficult because most of us absolutely hate the social awkwardness of it. But establishing a clear boundary is just incredibly liberating. Try pausing before answering. You can also separate the decision from the relationship. Remember, rejecting a request isn't rejecting the person. Or, say your boss gives you a new task. You can ask, I'd love to make this a priority. Which of my other projects should I deprioritize to focus on this? That instantly forces them to face the trade-off, protecting your energy from being completely hijacked.
That leads right into Section 5. Stage 3. Execute. Making the essential effortless.
Finally, in Stage 3, we stop relying on sheer force and willpower. Instead, we build systems to make doing the right things happen by default. The non-essentialist is constantly scrambling and reacting, but the essentialist builds in buffers, like, say, adding 50% more time to a deadline, and removes friction so the path forward is perfectly smooth. I absolutely love the analogy of the slowest hiker from the source material. If you're leading a group hike and people keep spreading out, you don't just push everyone to go faster. You find the slowest hiker, put them at the front to set the pace, and deliberately take weight out of their backpack. If you identify the slowest hiker in your own workflow and remove that obstacle, the whole system just speeds up effortlessly.
Let's look at how this applies practically across your life. Whether you're auditing your work meetings or cleaning up your digital inbox, you are always looking for that vital 20% that gives you 80% of your results. Maybe you over-prepare for studying to remove friction later on, or you protect your relationships by establishing really clear boundaries. Whatever the domain, you are constantly separating the vital few from the trivial many.
And finally, Section 6, the Priority Challenge, Living by Design.
Now we have to remember this mind-blowing historical fact. The word priority came into the English language in the 1400s, and it was singular. It stayed singular for 500 years. It literally meant the very first thing. It was only in the 1900s that we started pluralizing it, kind of pretending we could just bend reality, but you simply cannot have multiple first things. You get one priority. When you really boil all of this down, the exploring, the eliminating, the executing, it leads us to this incredibly profound question from poet Mary Oliver. She asks, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Because the hard truth is, if you do not prioritize your life, someone else absolutely will do it for you.
So, I'm going to leave you with this challenge. Look at your life right now. What is the one essential priority you will choose to protect today? And crucially, what is the one non-essential commitment you are going to courageously eliminate to make it happen? Thanks so much for exploring essentialism with me on this explainer. Now get out there and vigorously pursue less but better.